What's good, everybody? Today's video is one of the most important fitness videos that I'm putting out. If you're into any kind of fitness regime in a serious way, if you're serious about your long-term fitness, the one thing you've got to understand is that in long-term fitness, injuries are as much a part of your life as the actual fitness regime is. There's no such thing as injury prevention. But what does exist is injury minimization. And especially if you're into something like weight training, you've got to know everything there is to know about injury minimization. So let's go. Now, the first thing you've got to understand is that if you're someone who's new to weight training or resistance training or any form of exercise in general, your body isn't used to putting itself through so much stress. So in the initial stages of your training process, your body is going to react by creating a lot of muscle soreness. Your muscles are going to be very sore. So the first thing you've got to understand is that you shouldn't think that your muscle soreness is an injury. It's just a natural outcome of starting out on this exercise regime. Muscle soreness is not something you should be bothered about. You should start bothering about your pain if it's concentrated pain in your muscle. If there's only one spot in your muscle that's hurting. You should be even more bothered if the pain is present in any of your joints. That's usually a telltale sign of having a slightly serious injury. But the most serious injuries are where there's very concentrated, very sharp pain kind of deep inside your joints. That's how you tell if you've got a weight training injury. But keep in mind, when we're talking about gym injuries, weight training injuries, the golden rule is that you need to know when to stop your workout. A lot of gym injuries start off as small issues, but they can get worse in that particular workout. Now, the thing with gym injuries is that they happen very suddenly. You're not expecting them. You're just doing your set and then you feel something snapping. Now, there's two ways of going about this. The golden rule is that you're supposed to take a step back and either stop your workout entirely or go light in that particular workout. But a lot of people don't do this. For a lot of people, their inner gym bros and their gym egos come into play and they end up working out despite having that injury. And those 20 minutes of working out and finishing your entire workout despite having that injury makes the injury a lot worse. Now, as I said earlier, there's no such thing as injury prevention, but what does exist is injury minimization. And injury minimization boils down to learning about correct fitness science. Use the power of science to keep your body safe. That brings me to my top 4 rules when we're talking about minimizing injuries, starting with rule number 1, all about your form. In all my workout videos, I talk about how important the technique of doing the exercise is. There's a reason weight training is meant to be done in a certain way. It's to optimize your gains and keep your body safe. If you're a beginner to this whole working out process, make sure you check out my workout coaching playlist. I've made it entirely for beginners to teach someone who doesn't know anything about weight training everything they need to know about weight training. Which brings me to point number 2. Once you do know how to go about weight training and you're actually into it, a lot of people tend to get a little too enthusiastic. And in that enthusiasm, what happens is that they end up pushing too hard in every workout. And this ends up in them taking all their sets till failure. Now, by taking a set till failure, I mean, when someone's doing a bicep set, and by the 12th or 13th rep, they're completely worn out, but they still try pushing the weight even when their own arm isn't able to push the weight. That's called taking it till failure. Taking a set till failure is a very risky game to play. If you take all your sets till failure, that's the shortest road to getting injured. Failure is a tool that you need to use intelligently. You can probably take 3 or 4 sets in your entire workout till failure and be alright. All your other sets should just give you a bit of a burn and you should stop before reaching failure. What happens is every time you're taking it till failure, you're putting a lot of load on that particular muscle, and usually over time, after a bunch of workouts, you might see that that particular muscle gets overworked and it gets injured. That's how these sudden injuries happen in some workouts. Which brings me to point number 3. Now, there's these sudden injuries that happen in particular workouts, but you can damage your body over time as well. And this is where the concept of rest days comes into play. Now, if you don't take enough rest days, you're essentially overworking your body. Any kind of exercise regime is you putting stress on your body for it to grow. And especially when we're talking about resistance training or weight training, you've got to know when to listen to your body and take a step back. If you do too much work and you put too much load on your body, over time, there's going to be a day where it just snaps. And this is something you will learn in long-term gymming. So the protocol is that ideally you shouldn't be lifting weights or doing a lot of resistance training or any exercise regime for more than 3 days consecutively. And only under rare circumstances you should be stretching it to 4 days consecutively, but no more. Learn to start taking rest days every 2 or 3 days and you'll have enough rest. You'll give your body enough time to recover. And the fourth and final point is overconfidence. A lot of people in the intermediate stage or in the advanced stage of lifting want to lift heavy weights, which is a good thing for long-term fitness. But there's a technique when it comes to lifting heavier weights. Keep in mind, when you're doing any kind of resistance training, you're not just working your muscles, you're also working your nervous system. And when you're working your nervous system, you kind of need to warm it up a little bit. Remember, your nervous system is firing at full speed. So you need to know how to increment in terms of weight. So suppose say you're doing a shoulder overhead press and you start off with a light weight. That's kind of warming up your system first. And then you can move to slightly heavier weights and get your nervous system a little bit hotter. Now what happens is, if your nervous system and your muscular system isn't heated up enough, it might lead to injuries. Your body is kind of taking that heavy weight and that heavy increment as a shock. And in the process of the shock, because your body is not ready to deal with that heavy increment or that heavy weight, it ends up malfunctioning and it may get injured. So keep your ego in your pocket, and even if you're going for a heavy lifting session, work your way up to it. You've got to know how to warm up perfectly and you've got to know how to increment perfectly. That's what you've got to keep in mind. So all this was how to go about minimizing injuries, but they will happen to everyone and they will happen to you at some point, and they're gonna happen when you're least expecting it. So once the injury happens, how do you go about it? So here's the protocol, especially with injuries that happen in the middle of a workout. You'll know when something's going wrong in your back or your legs or your bicep. And your job is to take a step back. As I said earlier, they can get a lot worse if you overwork them. So in that particular workout, either stop the workout entirely or go lighter on that particular day. That's what you're supposed to do. But once you realize that you're injured and you go home, the next step ideally is to take complete rest for the next 2 to 3 days. And at the end of those 2 to 3 days, figure out how bad your injury is. Now, a lot of people might just recover in those 2 to 3 days, but for some people, if the injury is serious, you will definitely feel some amount of pain. And if your pain persists after those 3 days, you should go and see a doctor. So say you've just got a minor injury, what you've got to do is, say you're injured in your back workout while doing a pull-up. Now, ideally, what I'd suggest is, suppose you've gotten injured on your back workout, which is on a Monday, you wait for a week. And when you reach that stage where you're gonna work out again, where you're gonna work your back again, you go super light on that day. The body part that's injured is not as strong as your other body parts, and certain movements will damage it much more than other movements. If you've got injured doing a pull-up, you should avoid doing any pulling down exercises for some time. So avoid the pull-up and avoid the lat pull down. If you've got injured doing a bicep curl, avoid bicep curls for as long as you can. And even if you want to include those particular movements into your regime again, you include them very slowly, very gradually. Remember, muscle memory is a beautiful thing, and even if you feel like you are losing strength because you're not able to do certain movements, your strength is going to come back, but first you've got to let your body recover. As I've said earlier, any long-term exercise regime isn't just testing your body, it's also testing your mind. It's building discipline, and discipline is built not when you overcome easy situations. Discipline and commitment is built when you overcome difficult situations like this. When we're talking about long-term fitness regimes, there's no situation that's as difficult as getting injured and seeing all your strength and all your progress being depleted a bit. Remember, the greatest fighter is the one who rises after being knocked down multiple times. You get knocked down 10 times, you get up 11 times. And every time you get up from an injury, of course you're becoming physically stronger. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but you're also becoming stronger here. It does take a lot of strength to stay committed to a long-term exercise regime, but it also takes a lot of strength to get up when you're knocked down, and that's what you've got to remember. So if you're injured, you shouldn't be demotivated and quit the whole process. You shouldn't quit your exercise regime. You should go chasing that regime harder than you've ever gone chasing it before. Keep that in mind. Hey guys, if you liked today's video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Now keep in mind, on BeerBiceps, I've got 2 very important playlists. If you're a girl, I've got the women's fitness playlist, which will help you understand all these concepts of exercise better. And if you're someone who wants to get into the science of weight training in a deeper way, make sure you check out my Science of Muscle playlist. Either way, guys, subscribe to BeerBiceps, handles, Facebook page, and until next time, from Ranveer, see you.